Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. If you are watching this one, you'll see that we have a lot of guests. If you aren't watching this one, head over to YouTube or Spotify where you can actually watch this podcast, a video podcast. This is the Magical Learning Podcast. It's a podcast where we look at interesting topics in business and life and analyze them in a fun and interesting way. Today, we have a friend of the family and I guess friend of the show. I'm just going to say Monique. We'll get to you shortly, though, Monique. You're just a video for the moment. A much richer person to get into shortly. But before we do that, we've got to check and see how everybody's week is going. So let's start with Danette. Danette, how's your week going?
Yeah, good, Jez. It's been full-on week. And for Jez, it's also been a full-on week because this is the 6th podcast we've recorded this week. So we're getting ready. So we've got good content over the holiday break. And it's a long weekend in New South Wales. So I'm heading to the farm with Gran and Pa, Mum and Dad, this weekend. So Graham's already there. And we're going to be cleaning up the garden and hopefully avoiding things that wriggle.
Be they snakes or otherwise. Maybe worms, hopefully. Hopefully avoiding worms as well, just from a gross factor. Graham, how are you going? Speaking of, at the farm, live feed from the farm. How's things?
Up until 13 seconds ago, things were pretty good. Now, not so much, because I'm just looking around for things that might be worms with teeth. My work's been good, Jess. I was up in Canberra yesterday, took dear old Dad to get his hair cut, which was the social event of the week.
Thank you, Graham. It was, as always, a pleasure to have you on. And Leggers, how are you going this week? Leggers joining us, our graphic designer.
I'm good. Thanks for asking. My week's been pretty good, pretty chill. I'm just working on some sort of graphic design work for Danette FM stuff this week. So we're making some fun little playing cards that you can, is the sort of like a question thought group conversation style. So just been starting on the design for those and, otherwise just keeping it pretty chill. My week's not been as busy as everyone else's apparently, so I ain't going to complain about that.
Well, it's good to have you on, Leggers, as always. And Monique Richardson, our guest for today. How are you going? How's your week?
Great, thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. So good to be here. Well, I just had the week off because it's school holidays here in Victoria and decided to do a staycation with the 2 younger of the 4 children. So we just went and became tourists in our own town, 50,000 steps over 2 days. So that really was the illustration of how much shopping we did. And also that helped with all the eating that we did. So what better to do in Melbourne than to eat and shop and walk around our beautiful city. So it was epic. We hired a little Airbnb overlooking the water, overlooking the city, and it was awesome.
That is excellent, Monique. We are so happy to have you on here today. As I've mentioned, you're definitely a friend of the family here, and you've already been dancing with Allegra and Danette before, so that's an exciting thing. Monique, did you want to tell, before we get into today's conversation, which I'm so excited to get into, because we've had a chat about this topic a little bit before, and it is just amazing, your brain on this stuff. But before we get into that, did you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
For sure. Well, I have always loved service and customer service since I was 14 years and 9 months old. And that was the official age that you had to be to get your first job in customer service. I see Leggers is nodding there as well. So I started off in the Safeway deli. So I still think the best question I ever got to ask a customer was, may I break your cabana? And you'd be surprised like how many times people said no when you'd have to like roll it up and wrap it up in the paper. But it was then that I sort of became, I guess, so interested in human connection and just seeing the impact of service, remembering somebody's name, you'd roll up the straws for the kids, and I just really fell in love with service. So I ended up working in hospitality, contact centres. I was working as a nurse and studying to be a nurse. And then I was exposed to training and development in the hospitality sector. And I just had that moment of, that's what I want to do when I grow up. So I ended up working in service, working in training and development. And then I matched my 2 loves of service and learning and development. And so I've had my practice for 25 years. And now 25 years in December, it's my 25-year work anniversary. And now I work as a keynote speaker and trainer in service leadership and customer experience. And I still wake up so excited every day about what I do. So that's a little bit about me and how I came to be doing what I'm doing.
Well, Monique, I think this is a topic that is going to be interesting to pretty much everybody. I feel like there's almost no element of work now that doesn't have some element of customer facing, even if it's just at meetings. There's some elements, so it's something we can all improve in. I think, Monique, we've got a lot of questions here and we've got some interesting team members, so I think why not dive right into it? Danette, I might throw to you. So I've popped the questions in the chat. Did you have any questions today? And and feel free to just get into it with Monique.
Monique, first of all, I'd love for you to define what great customer interaction is from your perspective.
Great question, Danette. Look, I think a great customer interaction is one that is tailored to the individual. Because I think there is one thing in service is that it's not like a one size fits all. So a great customer interaction is tailored to the individual. It suits the individual. There's that element of personalization. And the other part, there's a very much around the human side. And the other part of a great customer interaction is when it is easy and when it is seamless and when it is effortless. And I'm sure we have all had experiences here of when we've been a customer and it has been really frustrating or difficult or hard. So I do find the best customer interactions have that combination of being, personalized, but also where it is really easy to be a customer. And it just changes so much depending on the context. So some great customer interactions are all digital. So, maybe I do a little bit too much online shopping and I can jump on and order something and then it, arrives. That's a great interaction. I haven't even had to interact with a human because that experience has been designed to be simple and easy and effortless and reliable. But then if I'm checking into a hotel and I'm staying there for a number of days on a family holiday, it's around that connection that you build with the team where they see you, they know you, they value, and they create experiences and memories. So great experiences and interactions can also be, internal in how we serve each other. So because of the breadth of different industries and sectors that I work in and different teams, and particularly as, customer experience now has such a digital and automated, experience as well, it really changes depending on the situational scenario.
Nice, great answer. I love that. So then it's sort of, I would imagine, given the length of time, and you must have started when you were 2, I reckon, in your
Correct.
practice. What changes have you seen in the service industry, over time, and what's changing at the moment that people should be aware of?
Look, there have been so many changes in terms, I think, of particularly how we serve and how we experience service as a customer. So if I go back to my initial days, which were very much, face to face in retail, in hospitality, contact centers, answering the phones and so on. So, if I think about those, service experiences, there was definitely a lot more of that human element. If you think about the supermarket experience now, where you can self-check out, you've got online delivery. I mean, I still go to my local Coles at least once or twice a day. I know all the team, they're glorious, they're amazing. But we also can see just how much the way that we serve customers has definitely changed over time. And yet in other areas, it still feels like yesterday in some other industries where that hasn't changed. I think we also can see customers' expectations have changed. And a really big thing that we see is around the expectations transfer. So what I'm experiencing as a customer, for example, that I can do with my bank or at this retail store, I am now expecting as a customer in this industry. So as customers, we don't compare, necessarily against industry to industry. We just compare our expectations. So we're expecting things quicker and faster than ever before. And if we think about, AI, everything around technology, that's really impacted on customers' expectations. And even that within itself, in terms of looking at so many things now that are changing and sectors that are changing that are including a lot more automation and AI to be able to do some of those perhaps tasks that now mean that we can focus more on that human experience of when customers need to speak to somebody or engage someone, because we're happy to do a lot more things ourselves than we ever were.
Love that answer. Thank you for sharing that. And I love your breadth of experience in this whole area too. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you, Danette. And I'll throw to Graham. Graham, did you have a question there for Monique?
So many questions. Yeah, tomorrow night's winning Tats Holder numbers would be great.
That
Just
is number
drop them in the
7.
chat. We won't
Oh,
share them with anyone
oh.
else. I was rather than share the question that I have in the chat, because it's me inclined to sort of go down the devil's advocate route. And for a long time, I'm sure you'd be aware of this, we, certainly in hospitality and customer service space, we were indoctrinated to the idea that the customer is always right, which I think is terribly dangerous in so many ways. But then I was thinking of one of the shifts in customer expectations in the last maybe decade, maybe it's a bit longer, I'm not sure, is this idea that I can get exactly what I want, literally, to the point, and it's. I'd like to get your spin on how things have flipped around. So we can go into a restaurant and sit down in a restaurant, and I don't know whether everyone does this, but I wonder how many people feel that regardless of what's on the menu, I should be able to just create my own dish in my head and say, this is what I want. And then I'll get upset if you can't deliver exactly that. It's a little like a while back, you could buy bottles of soft drink with your name on the label, allegedly. And I wonder, are we, and because technology and AI makes a lot of this personalization potentially so much easier, but are we making it impossible for service organizations to meet a broadening demand of, as a customer, I demand to have exactly what I want, regardless of what, I don't care what you make. If it's not exactly what I want, then change it so that it is exactly what I want.
Yeah,
I don't even know if there was a question in there, Mon, but what the hell? You just, away you go. I demand an answer.
Well, Graham, I'll give
Please.
you the
Thank you.
photo numbers a little bit later on. But I do think I would like to respond to and I think it comes into that one, the customer is always right. So it was really interesting when I was researching my first book where that statement came from. And it's like literally in the early 1900s, like about this, the customer is always right. Now, I don't know about everybody else on this podcast, but I'm not always right. I can admit it sometimes, but we're not always right. But I love Shep Hyken. He's a customer service author that says the customer may not always be right, but if they are wrong, let them be wrong with dignity and respect. So I love that if somebody is wrong, there's the opportunity for education and information. But this universal expectation that the customer is always right and can always get what they want, that is not, in my eyes, right either. And also, if we're thinking about the service that we provide, and if we think about the products and the services, definitely there still can be that element of that customization and personalization. But it also, I think your question raises what can sometimes be unrealistic customer expectations. So I am all for customers and I'm all for creating amazing, memorable, incredible experiences. I work a lot in the, government sector, local government sector, as well in the commercial sector, where we can't always give customers what they want. They're not always right. They're not always going to be happy with the outcome. If somebody's put in for a planning permit and doesn't get that permit, for example, they're not going to be necessarily happy with the outcome, but we can't just throw planning laws out the window and say, no, we're going to give you what, you want. So for me, a really big part of that is helping team members to be able to, when we can't give the customer what they want, how do we then have that conversation with the customer? So what's the language that we use? How do we then educate and inform the customer? How do we maybe look at potential alternatives and options? And if we can't deliver or give the customer what we want, it's actually about helping the team, and that's a lot of the training that I do as well, in how do we actually deliver that message in a customer focused way. So we're not setting up this completely unrealistic expectation for organizations, resources, cost, if they're trying to just invent things on the spot that are not aligned with what they do. But also recognizing, which is another huge part of the work that I do as well, Graham, is when customers' behaviour is unreasonable. And when customers' behaviour does become unacceptable, there is a line in the sand. So yes, the customer might be upset in that instance. They might be angry. I do a lot of work around training around diffusing and de-escalating those situations. But also if that customer's behaviour is completely unreasonable or unacceptable, how do we make sure that teams are also empowered to know how to have those conversations so that we're still focusing on the experience that we provide the customer, but we're also protecting the team and making sure that they've got the skills and the tools to be able to have the conversations they need to have if they are met with unrealistic expectations.
Thank you, Mon. Lovely response. I really do like that. And as a customer in a Q&A sort of environment, I feel appropriately put in my place. It prompts a million other questions, but I'll shut up because there are lots of other really good questions. But thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Graham. Well, I'll throw to Leggers now. Leggers, do you want to tell us about your question here for Mon?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, dealing with the public can be a varied experience for, the person that's sort of interacting with just the general facing public. So I was just wondering, what are some surprising things that you've learned in this space from your research and your experience sort of working in customer service? And what are the ones that have sort of surprised you?
Yeah, look, I think there's always things that just continue to surprise me. I think the stories that I hear, and some of them are amazing, and some of them make my toes curl. But I think a lot of the things in terms of looking at my research that I do is also very much around customer behavior, how customer behavior is changing, how expectations are rising, but also I think when we look at the organisations that I also work with, one of the things that really stands out for me is just how many organisations are just truly committed to providing incredible customer experiences. And it was really interesting. I responded to an article that was released recently in the paper that talked about, basically that customer service in Australia was dead. And so I wrote a response piece back to that. But, I think from my, experience, what I am just continually inspired by is just how many organisations out there are just really, committed to both, their people experience and their customer experience, and looking at what they can do to be able to provide both. And I think that for me, I started off very much looking at the general public facing. I looked very much initially at training team members in the front line in service. And from my research and experience, I then delved a lot more into the impact of leadership on customer experience and looking at that whole concept of service leadership. And my book that I wrote, They Serve Like We Lead, How to Take Care of Your People so They Take Care of Your Customers, that was probably for me still my favourite research and experience that I've had, is around the impact of leadership on customer experience. Because I think at the surface, we look at people providing experiences, and if it's not great, we blame the person. So that was a really big piece of research for me, was around the impact of leadership, but also the impact of the enablers of service. So I've always said people just don't turn up to deliver bad customer service. I mean, can you imagine somebody waking up in the morning and having a stretch and going, you know what, I think I'm going to go and deliver really bad customer service today. I've only met maybe one or two people in my lifetime that I think that's what they do. But if you think about it, right, organisations, they have to be able to set people up for success. So it started off like it was here with the frontline, and the more work that I did, the more my practice deepened, the more I worked with leaders and culture and organisations. It very much became about how leadership impacts service and all of the enablers of the service culture, and making sure that we've got that internal service quality right. The training, the coaching, the support, the people experience, the employee experience, and how much that impacts not only on the customer experience, but also on the bottom line and on profitability. So it all led back to people first. If we get that part right, and not all organisations that I work with, for profit is the outcome, but regardless of what that outcome is, it all starts with taking care of your people. So I know that may have been a longer way around it, but it's been fascinating to be able to, do a lot of research. That very traditional, a number of years ago, the servant, leadership, but literally that as leaders, we're there to be of service to our people. We're there to serve our people. And I still, to this day, just love researching that topic.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And it totally also makes sense because if you sort of put the customer first, you're more likely to get repeat customers, which sort of, makes your business do well in the future as well. So I think, yeah, no, that's a really great point, and
Yeah.
important to sort of take note that also some companies are doing really well in this space as well,
Yeah.
in your opinion. So, no, that's really great. Thank you for that.
And I think Legis for me, like I ended up the model that I ended up creating was like an infinity model that joined customer experience and employee experience. Because I
Yeah.
think, there's been a lot of talk over the years about, we have to put our, people first or customer. We just can't have one without the other. But
Yeah.
that's what I see is the power of when organizations join the people and the customer experience together. That's
Yeah.
when you get the most incredible results.
And I mean, like, if you have happy employees, they're probably going to have a better, face for the public as well.
Oh,
I think if they're disgruntled, you're more likely to get those customer sort of facing people that wake up in the morning and just want to do a terrible job in that role.
absolutely.
So,
And
yeah, no, great point.
And that can lead to, things like more sick leave. That can lead to
Yeah.
attrition. That's when you get amazing people that actually, leave organizations
Yeah.
and they're not necessarily quitting the company, but they're quitting a leader that doesn't take care of them or doesn't empower them or doesn't enable them to be able to deliver great, experiences. So
Yeah.
I just see that so much in the organizations that I work with. And it's really exciting to see work that, the clients that I'm working with are doing that are being able to find that way of being able to focus on both.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad to hear that. Because also it's, nice to work for a place that is taking that two-prong approach as well. Like they
Yeah.
care about all of the people that they're sort of interacting with, not just one or the other.
Yeah.
So that's great. You're doing a great thing for the people everywhere, workers and
Thanks, Russ.
customers.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Legas. And also, Mon, I mean, it just makes sense. It sounds like it's basically what you're saying is that businesses have a way they treat people, be they customers or employees in a way. Like, they're both, it's just there's a precedent almost that's set.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does. It starts with really interesting. One of my favorite models goes back a number of years ago with the Harvard service profit chain. And that whole, model actually starts with the, internal service quality first. So making sure that you get the right people, you recruit the right people that actually want to serve customers. I did have one person turn up to my training session once and they were first to arrive, right? So we're having a bit of a chat and I just sort of said, so, tell me a little bit about what you do. And they said, I can't believe I'm here. They said, I hate customers. They said, I hate talking to them. I hate dealing with them. They said, I just can't stand dealing with customers. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. I said, what is it that you do at your company? And they said, I'm the receptionist. So they had essentially sent this person to a one-day training program to get them to love customer service. Now, this was a really amazing individual that I caught up with afterwards and found out what made them tick and what made them, get up every day and what they love doing, and actually gently talk them around doing something else that wasn't so public facing. Like working with customers is not for the faint-hearted, right? So, but part of that internal service quality and that business focus or organizational focus is around that people first approach and getting the right people, giving them the training, giving them the tools. I always talk about this, setting them up for success so that they can take care of the customers. So where it all begins.
It's actually funny, Mon. I think yesterday I was watching a TikTok where they did a skit where it was if retail employees got paid 200 grand a year, and it's these people like running items out to people's cars, like making everything so easy for the customer, like treating them like they're like an emperor or something. But anyway, I think that's kind of an interesting skit that kind of relates to today. I wanted to ask Mon because when we've been talking, we've talked about a term called the heart of service that you have sort of come up with. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what that is and then tell me about how you identified it as an idea.
Yeah, so that's going to be my upcoming podcast, which is called The Heart of Service, with this amazing podcast guru and host, like, Jez, just saying. So feeling very, very blessed that this is going to be happening because it's been a concept, an idea that I've had. But I just truly believe that when we serve from the heart and from our heart, that's where we see magic. And that can be in how we serve each other within an organization, because that's a really, often big part of the work that I do as well, is looking at internal service and how we serve each other internally. That can be how we serve our customers, and that can be our, customer facing teams. And then also when we've got leaders that truly, serve from the heart. And so it encompassed for me the concept of, regardless of what we were doing, in what part of service, in what part of, whether it's around service culture, service leadership, whether it's around service excellence, or another key area that I work in around service recovery or complaints and difficult customer behavior. If we're serving, from our heart, then that's where we do see the ripples. And I truly believe that service is one of the things that genuinely can impact on somebody's life, like somebody's day, somebody's experience. And, I remember working with one council, and it was one of the youth teams, and there was a very at-risk youth that had this amazing experience with the youth services team that ended up going back and engaging, that literally saved this person's life. So I just think sometimes customer service for me, and customer experience and service leadership, it's beyond transaction. It's recognizing that, showing up with heart and serving with all of our heart means that we genuinely get to impact on people's lives, on people's day, on their experience, or a memory that they're going to carry with them and be thinking about 20 years later. So for me, life's all about heart. And, it's how I like to, show up for my customers and clients, and for my friends, and for my family. But I truly believe serving from our heart creates a different experience than just turning up and serving, and giving our whole heart into what we do.
Absolutely. Mon, I mean, I'm sure everybody has in their minds moments where they had great customer service, like something that was just way above and beyond what was expected, and it ended up being fantastic. And I know this isn't exactly the same, but something where I think of it is like almost like Steve Irwin, where you sort of look at how passionate he was about what he's into. I know he wasn't directly serving customers in that instance, but what he was trying to do is bring people into what he liked about that thing. As a tour guide, in a way, it was just videoed, but it was because he cared so much and so much passion, and he was able to bring so much of himself. I think he really cared about nature, and then you could feel that through the screen. And so if you
Yeah.
were a tour guide, he would have been excellent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And look, I still see videos of him, Jez, and just think he was just, I think, an extraordinary example of somebody with so much passion and so much heart. And again, thinking about how he showed up for, his family and loved ones as well. But he had a bigger message, and that was around, conservation, and the part that we could play in bringing people, in on that journey. And I still get goosebumps when I see videos of him, and just that message. And that's what I truly believe service can do. I believe, service, if we think about even some of the concepts of service, of how it literally can change the world. If we think about how we show up and serve each other, be that as a community, as individuals, it can have huge ripple impacts.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. Monique, it's very exciting, and I hope people are getting their ears excited for the podcast, because there'll be a lot more insights around that on the Heart of Business. But we'll get to that's coming out soon. TBD. We'll link that when it's ready. We've got another question here quickly, Monique. And we'll jump into this one. This one's from Marg, and Marg's written in: what lessons from your experience would you pass on to your kids? Has this changed the way you think people should raise people? Just sort of your lessons, I guess, and learning around what you've learned from customers and service.
Yeah, look, I think as a mother of 4 children, there's been, I guess, lots of lessons that I've passed on. I think there's been 2-pronged lessons. One is around how to serve customers and how to take care of customers. And my eldest daughter has got her own business, and I see that in the way that she shows up and how much her clients love her repeat work. She's just actually had a clothing brand name a clothing line after her, and I'm like, wow, that's like at the a particular piece of clothing after her. So, and I'm just like, that's at the top of the relationship, ladder. I have my second child who's working in luxury hospitality, and has switched from working in, studying high performance sport to finding his purpose and love in the service of others. And he's worked out his purpose every day is to be able to get up and provide amazing experiences. So and then the next 2 to be confirmed. So I think my lessons that they've probably, and I learned that from my late father. He was a bank manager, and the way that he, cared about people. It didn't matter who they were, in what position. He treated everyone as an equal. He took care of his people. He took care of his customers. He'd remember everybody's names and what football cards that they liked, and he'd bring them in footy cards and what flowers he liked. And so, I hope that those are the lessons that I've been able to, teach my kids through conversations, not through sitting them down, teaching them and going, this is how you do it. It's just, I would imagine, very much like the conversations that you all have. It's through osmosis. It's through conversations around how to show up and be of service to others. But I think I've also very much educated the kids on how to be a good customer. And that is always to show up with gratitude and grace and kindness to those that are serving you. And I'm genuinely really proud of my little, four, well, not so little because two of them are older and way taller than me. Actually, three are taller than me. One's still shorter. But I do look at the way that they treat people in service. And I remember one dinner, my little one, because, we always have to say thank you for dinner and please may I leave the table. But, he stood up on his chair at the restaurant and yelled out, thank you for dinner to the chefs, or they'd go to the back of the restaurant and thank the chefs. And we were recently on holidays and one of the team members changed their shift so that they could be there on our last day to hang out with the kids. And I see them hugging people when we're on holidays, learning languages to communicate with the team. I see them writing little notes, and I love how kind they are to people in service, because that's been a really big lesson to me. And this is to the point, and this is the way people should raise, children and raise people, to be able to treat people in service with respect and with kindness. And when things don't work out, we can have a really kind, polite conversation, but we don't ever treat people with disrespect. And, I think to be able to see that in full circle in how they do treat others, all the way through to when they do have McDonald's. Dirty secret, I love McDonald's. And they always clean up food court wherever we are. They clean up their dishes. They put their, cutlery away. They throw out their rubbish. But I had some embarrassing moments early on when they were younger, yelling out at customers going, Mum, they didn't put their rubbish away, when we were at a food court or at a restaurant. So, I'm really, really passionate about two things, absolutely customers, but how we treat and how we care for people, in service, because they do an extraordinary job in how they show up every day, dealing with so many challenges and people and multiple tasks. And I've seen it. I've nearly got into a few arguments defending our customer service community because I can't stand there and take it, and I won't stand there and watch it. But I think if we just all, could, and it starts early, right? So it starts with those lessons really early on about how we treat people who take care of us and who serve us, and how do we show up for them.
Oh, gosh, Mon, I feel like I could talk to you about this forever. It's given me so many flashbacks to different customer interactions and things I want to get into, but we don't have time. So we've got to keep rolling. We'll have to have you back on to get into a bit more of this. Or, of course, people can go check out your podcast. Let's jump into Kanika's final question here before we wrap up, which is, having worked in both hospo and occasionally managing talent, sometimes customers and service can be hard work and unfair. Do you have any approaches you use when a customer feels like they're overstepping?
Yeah, so when the customer is overstepping the mark, yeah. So I always look at it from two angles. There's the managing sort of the angry, upset, difficult customer behavior, and that's very much around de-escalation techniques. So I do a lot of training around a heat method, which is around hearing the customer out and empathizing. Sometimes an apology is required, asking some more questions and then taking ownership to try and find a resolution. So if the customer's, upset, angry, irritated, that's part of working in service, right? But when the customer oversteps the mark, that's when that moves into that unacceptable customer conduct. So that can be anything from where the customer, is aggressive, where they are swearing at the team member, not like the conversational swearers. I don't know if you've ever met a conversational swearer before, but they're like, how's your beeping day going? Oh, it's beeping nice out there, isn't it? But like, as compared to you beeping beep. And so if it's swearing, if it's any racial, any homophobic, transphobic, personal insults, threats, etc. So that is where it becomes the unacceptable customer conduct. So, I think it's such an important question, because for me, it has to be grounded in a policy around unacceptable customer conduct. So that as well as knowing how to de-escalate, there needs to be a separate technique to use if somebody is in danger or if the customer has overstepped the mark. But if that policy isn't there, and if there hasn't been the training, and if there hasn't been, the team doesn't know what to do. I literally had somebody say recently, I was just standing there with my hands by my side. I had no idea what to do. So making sure organisations have got a very clear unacceptable customer conduct policy, making sure everybody has had training in that unacceptable customer conduct policy, and that is from the very, very first minute that they start. So that becomes part of their induction and training so that they've got skills to de-escalate the angry, upset ones. But when the customer oversteps the mark, they can very confidently say that this is, what I need to do and these are what actions I need to take. And then making sure as well that there is recording, there is reporting, and that there is also debriefing for that team member. So it's all about the protection and well-being of the team.
Well, as I turned my mic on, I knocked over every single pen I had, so that's good. Mon, that was a great answer, and I mean, I think it's something that a lot of places aren't equipped for, but it's such an important and obvious one when you say it like that. It just needs to be set up in case this does happen. So I think excellent conversation. I'm sure people have been taking a lot of notes, but before we get to sort of the final things, let's grab everyone's sort of final thoughts today. So I might start with Danette here. Danette, do you have any final thoughts on today's conversation?
Yeah, totally love this topic, and your expertise, your passion for this, Mon. I really loved your infinity model about the people and the customer, because it is so true that if we concentrate on one, it's lopsided, but
Yeah.
understanding that they impact each other and that both are equally important. So no, I totally loved it. I'd love to have a podcast where we bring Mon on and we talk about interesting customer experiences, because when you were just talking then I was thinking of two that I've heard of that were hilarious. I reckon we have let's share some ones that will make us laugh but not embarrass anyone personally, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Danette, for great questions and great chat. Graham, I'll throw to you. Any final thoughts on today's conversation?
So many. Why is it that the phrase, may I break your cabana, is now stuck in my head? And just translating for those in northern states, cabana might be called cabanossi for those in other countries. No, it's not a little room next to a pool. But may I break your cabana sounds much better than may I break your meat stick, I think. I'm not sure. I love the idea, Mon, of how do we be a good customer? Seriously, how do I show up as a consumer, as a buyer, as a customer, and how can I make that experience, regardless of whether it's going to make the experience for the service provider any better, how do I just show up a little bit more me and a little bit less head stuck in screen thing? The hairs on the back of my neck started standing up when Danette was talking about sharing some customer service experiences, because I suspect one of those might have nothing to do with me. Anyway, it's been great to see you and great to chat with you again, so thank you for being here. It's been really good. You can edit out all of that other stuff, Jez, hopefully.
Well, thanks, Graham, for being on today, and great chat today. I think it's been really interesting. Legacy, did you have any final thoughts today on the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Monique, I really feel like your passion really comes through for service and for people and businesses and leaders. Like, I feel like you are definitely doing the work that you should be doing. You can feel that you've got the heart to do it, and also, like, the point where you bring up it, like, it's like goes beyond the transaction. Like, when you're in service, it's actually like impacting people's lives. Like, like in grocery stores, you get maybe older people that don't talk to anyone except for the checkout person in their week. And like, maybe that person doesn't know the significance of the work that they do for that individual customer, but like, it actually does have impact on people. So thank you so much for, helping businesses improve and for, spreading the word.
Thanks, Lakers.
It was a great conversation today.
Yes, and Monique, I took a bunch of notes down. I have to say, the thing about how we all have different expectations now, and how we just take them across industries and just expect things. I know I'm thinking about that for myself. What am I expecting too much of? Even as a customer. And then that concept of letting people be wrong with dignity, I thought was really good. The biggest example that comes to my mind throughout this whole thing, I'm going to try and get it in under 60 seconds. Was I used to work at this grocery store, and we used to have this guy that came in that was very aggressive all the time. I think he was maybe on substances. And one week he was really upset because there was no pineapples, and that's all he came in for. So he was very upset. And I don't know what happened, but the conversation, he was yelling at people, and it ended up de-escalating where I somehow convinced him to move to Queensland, and he felt happier. So I don't know exactly what happened in that customer interaction, but it went from a full-blown anger thing to he sort of realized he might need to make different decisions in his life, not around groceries, but around other things. And I think when you were starting to explain one of your models, I was like, I can start to see how this actually accidentally may have fallen into this model of like listening to him and what have you. But as Danette said, we've got plenty of stories around those where that could keep going. Before we wrap up here, Monique, is there anything else that you wanted to leave our listeners with that we maybe didn't cover, or any additional things that you wanted to leave our listeners with and viewers?
I just wanted to say thank you. Like, what an amazing group of people that I've got to spend this time with. And I know that you all live and breathe service, and that example that you just shared too, Jess. So I know, I often talk about having service in our soul, and I know for each of you that you've got that service in your soul. And I just really wanted to thank you for the opportunity to to speak with you and to have this time with you, because I know you are incredible individuals and an incredible team, and it's just been a real gift to be able to be here and just to share and talk about what gets me out of bed and still gets me excited every day, and that's around everything that we can do to take care of each other, and to take care of our customers, and to take care of our people. So I thank you. You are all amazing.
Well, Mon, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. We've all taken a lot of notes. Now, people have been listening to this and gone, I've got to reach out to Monique. That was a really good conversation. I need to learn more about customer service. I want my business to have better customer service. Where's the best place for them to do that?
So they can just go to my website, which is just moniquerichardson.com.au.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Monique. Thank you, team. What an excellent conversation. I thought we got some great insights and conversation going there. Monique, thank you so much. What an amazing guest. To everybody that's been listening and sharing, thank you so much. We're now over 11,000 subscribers. Hopefully by the time you listen to this, maybe 12,000 subscribers on YouTube. But otherwise, thank you everybody for listening. And as always, have a magical week.